What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm your host for today's festivities, Rockin Robbie Billups. This is the Rex and the Robbie Show, and you can't have the Rex and the Robbie Show without Robbie and the rambunctious one himself. It's Ranting Rex. What is up, my man?
What's up, man? I'll try to stay focused today, although you gave us a open-ended topic for today. So I have a bone to pick with you on that, but I'll get into that later when we get started.
Okay. All right. Yeah, well, today's topic is the best TV shows of all time. There's been some breaking news this week, right? Penguin Random House buying Boom Studios. They just dropped the Captain America trailer today for the new movie, showing a little tease of the Red Hulk, all kinds of stuff. But the biggest thing that hit me this week was I realized it's the 20th anniversary of Lost. And Lost is one of my favorite shows of all time, right? And to me, Lost was just like 5 or 10 years ago. But no, it's 20 years old now. And I realized how old all of my favorite shows are. I don't talk a lot about modern television. I just don't really find the time to watch a lot of modern shows, though I hear stuff is really good. But I wanted to have this conversation with you and the chat out there. And what are some of the greatest television shows of all time, right? What do you think about that, Rex?
Well, I'm looking at the chats, right? And I agree with a lot of what people put up there, right? Star Trek Next Gen, Sopranos. But this is the bone I have to pick with you. I think the topic you picked is way too wide. I think it has to be generational, right? So to give you an example. So growing up, Rush Home, Gilligan's Island, Brady Bunch, shows like that. Then, of course, came the $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman, all ABC because we have problems, tuning into ABC. Then, so you got broadcast TV, you got now streaming now. I think that the category is too wide. So it has to be era based. So from that era, I would say $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, probably one of my
we're losing you, Rex.
favorites. Okay. Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. You back?
Am I back?
I think so. You tell me.
Am I back? Who knows? So we're all up and down the board. We're gonna get hammered by thunderstorms and all that. So I mean, this happens on a sunny day here. So it can't be good today. But what I was saying is, I think a question has to be broken up. So when I was a kid, broadcast TV, I had 3 major channels plus your UHF channels. Some of the big ones, as I said, $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman. My mom, her big favorite was Hawaii Five-0, with Jack Lord and, shows like that. I remember shows like Cannon, okay, just different, Telly Savalas was in one. What was Kojak, So there are shows from that era. Then you move on to my younger adulthood, and you got different shows from. It's going to be like that, one of those Comcastic days, my friend.
Well, I wouldn't expect anything less, Rex.
Crap. Yeah, I know, but I can already feel it. Today's going to be really bad. So as I was saying, then you had shows and then the original Battlestar Galactica, which came out after Star Wars, what was it, 79, 80. So, all those were novel shows. They were favorites of mine at the time. Now you got so many different choices, so many different methods of streaming, Star Trek, the original series, obviously, Space 1999, Doctor Who. I mean, and then you have, different stages and you can't, like Sopranos, obviously one of the best, but that was an HBO driven, when cable was the thing, so I don't see how you can really compare the two, if you know what I mean.
Well, I get what you're saying. So I mean, that's something we could definitely do would be like best shows, our favorite shows from when we were kids, or our favorite shows from the 70s, or our favorite shows from the 80s, stuff like that, right? Because my television journey, same type thing. Like the first shows I remember watching like religiously would be like Brady Bunch, Gilligan's Island, things like that would come on. Amy.
It, it's Amy.
Feels like the good old days, right?
doing
When
Max Headroom.
I can just go surprise.
Well, I don't know. We're getting Comcast at left and right today.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Well, look, he's got a storm coming. It's not good on a sunny day. What do you think's going to happen when there's a storm coming bearing down on
I think
us?
it didn't do all the bad rain last night. It's going to
No,
continue.
2 days.
Oh, great.
Yeah, dude, you got to watch the weather more often. All right, so you know the topic, right?
Favorite TV shows,
Right.
yeah.
I just
going with the old school.
I just told Robbie I have a bone pick with him because it's too wide, right? It's got to be your base. So what I watched as a kid to what I watch today or what I watch as a young adult, different, right? So, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just catching her up.
Oh, that's fine. No, I was saying that, like, same thing, watching reruns as a kid, watching cartoons, things like that. One of my favorite shows when I was young was Charles in Charge, for instance. Like, I just was obsessed with that show, right? And then in the late 80s, early 90s, I started getting into Star Trek, and I definitely have an era on my list. Like, there's an era of television that's when I was watching television. These are the shows I like, and after that, it's just kind of like, man, I don't know. I don't get. It's easy for me to put it all together. I don't, it's fine. I got like 10 shows here, like I can list. But that's a good idea. Would be to do like decade-driven TV shows or things like that. Like, there's a lot of and television's different. Like, the TV shows of the 80s way different than the TV shows of the day. The sitcoms were stronger, the dramas were weaker. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Another one that was a big favorite that drifted into like high school and the college was Dallas, and then the inevitable spinoff Knots Landing. So it was nighttime soaps. That was a big thing. And there was a period when I was a freshman in college, daytime soaps, General Hospital. That was like a huge event.
Any soap opera fans out there?
Well, there used to be a ton of us. I mean, it was. Now I heard one of the last daytime soaps is being canceled. I don't know what it is, but it's era driven. As things change, as our habits change, and what we watch changes, and how it's delivered to us even changes. So it's difficult to pin down when you say that. You know what I mean? It's hard. I remember there was a mini series. What was it, V or something? A sci-fi series. I really enjoyed that. But would I watch it today? Something similar? Probably not, because there are way too many choices today, right? So I'd find something else. No,
yeah,
I
we were
never
just
got
stuck
into
with whatever we had
watched,
on. We were just stuck with whatever we had on the television back in the day, right? Just whatever they had, that's what we had.
Exactly. That's what you got. Okay, you watched it or you didn't. I remember one of my all-time favorites, obviously Beretta, and then there was Starsky and Hutch. The cop dramas out there. All right. I remember going to college and there was Miami Vice. Miami Vice was a big one with the soundtrack and Crockett and Tubbs and the Ferrari, the Testarossa. He just Magnum PI. I mean, so it's really hard to kind of pinpoint one thing or another. So
well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what you got there. Amy, what about you? What's some of the you're starting to television? What were some of your first favorites when you were younger?
When I was younger, well, and I'm not just saying this because our new book's coming out. Powerpuff Girls was a big one for me. That was my introduction to superheroes. And really, when you're a young kid, it's Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, the Disney channel, like all the Disney stuff.
See, none of that existed when I was growing up. You came home, you watched on UHF. In our area, it was channel 17. Channel 29, and you watch the cartoons like the Spider-Mans, right? The psychedelic Spider-Man series, all right? Things like that. And you watch those limited TV shows. But so it's but I remember what you're talking about because when my daughter was growing up, I'd be watching those as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
there was a Disney Channel show that I used to love back in the 90s, I think around middle school. It was like, I don't remember what it was called. Maybe it was like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland or something. I don't know. It was like a sitcom of Alice in Wonderland. And it had the Mad Hatter and the the White Rabbit and the March Hare, like they were all there, and it was just like she was always in her bedroom, and then she'd go into Wonderland. I don't remember what that show was called. I'm gonna look this. Do you remember that one, Amy? Does that ring a bell?
I'm sorry. I think I missed that one.
Adventures in Wonderland, 92 through 95, American live action puppet musical television series based on the novels. Okay. Yeah, that was it. Wow, I just unlocked a memory there. Wow. I also used to love Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego a lot. Game shows, those are TV shows, I guess. So we should do a game show episode. Favorite game shows. All right, let's kick it off. Rex, what's one of your favorite television shows of all time?
That's so hard to pick from. I mean, as I said, that's why I filed my complaint with you. All right, let's do it in parts. So way back in the beginning era, I would say probably, and this would be reruns that you would catch on UHF. Three Stooges, Little Rascals, Honeymooners, all black and white. And those are shows that I watch at the very, very beginning. And then, of course, your cartoons after school, whatever they may be, Spider-Man, so on and so forth. The Japanese shows like Ultraman, Johnny Sato and his robot, things of that nature. Those were the things I remember growing up. And then, I'd be forced to watch whatever my mom wanted to watch as well. So shows like Hawaii Five-0, Cannon, Kojak, things of that nature. So you'd end up, as you said, you had a limited exposure. As I started to pick more, I would say, the original Battlestar Galactica. Because
Twilight Zone. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the comments out loud.
Yeah, well, Twilight Zone, interestingly enough, as well. But as a kid, Twilight Zone scared me. But then they had, over July 4th weekend, Heroes and Icons was running a yeah, thank you, Gorgrim. So they did a Twilight Zone marathon on Heroes and Icons, and I just got stuck on it and watched every episode. It's amazing how many stars pass through that show. It really is absolutely amazing. And even to the when they tried to remake it in color, and I didn't appreciate the script or the storyline that they had in Twilight Zone. It was very interesting. I mean, one of the ones that sticks out was a very famous actress, I forget her name, but where she's trapped in the department store, and she's in the department store, and the store closes, and she's looking to find people and all this stuff. And it turns out she's actually a mannequin. And the mannequins all have a deal. Like, one of them gets to go out and live in the real world for 30 days, but they got to come back. And she was coming back and had forgotten she was a mannequin. So that was a real interesting kind of, storyline. Yeah, figure drawing. Yeah, that one was, they remade that in color. Okay. And they changed things up a little bit because, as I said, they were running a marathon. They remade that when they tried to revive Twilight Zone. I forget when. I guess it was the 80s maybe. And they redid it, and it was in a mall as opposed to a department store because it was a reflection of how times had changed. By the time you got in the 80s, the malls were the big thing, right? But prior to that, it was department stores, okay? So it was interesting to kind of see that, but it was a great concept. So they did it again. And that was not scary, but kind of freaky. And, you didn't have all those big time special effects and all that to scare people. It's the concept that scares me. So
you guys keep going. I gotta check something really, really quick. So sorry.
So to me, that was a big show, growing up. And I found it interesting that it didn't bother me. It was black and white. I thought it would at this point in time, but it really didn't. After the first 15 minutes, I stopped thinking about it. And it was more just kind of seeing those old stars reminiscing about how young they look. But I got to admit, Ultraman was probably my favorite. You know, just coming home after school and watching Ultraman on TV. You know, why he always, you know, had that blinking light, you know, because he stayed out for too long or whatever. It was the same kind of theme every episode, but it was just something you watched, loved it.
Yeah. All right. Heck yeah. Well, one of my favorite things, you know, in my younger years was Power Rangers, for instance, you know, very Ultraman esque in a way, you know, based on Super Sentai, of course. And later on in my life, I got into Super Sentai super hard and just loved it. Right. But one I want to bring up is Lost, which started this whole thing, right? Because, man, Lost is 20 years old this year, right? And I was like, man, that just so freaking blows my mind, right? But I know Lost was huge when it first came out. I didn't get into Lost. I remember I watched the first like couple episodes with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, it's all right, you know, whatever. And then I kind of fell out of it, but then everybody keeps talking about it. And then I just randomly watched an episode in season 2 and was just like, man, this show has gone crazy. I want to know what's up with this hatch and all this kind of stuff. So I went, and this was a big change that we had around this time in the early 2000s, but you were able to have television shows on DVD, right? And I remember getting Lost season 1 and flying through it. And then I continued to watch Lost, and I was eagerly awaiting like the season 2 DVD set because I hadn't seen like the first 10 episodes of season 2 or something like that, right? That's definitely something that started changing the way that we view television. Because at first, like you were saying, it's everything that's on your television. You got like 3 or 4 channels, then you get cable. But when you were able to start through Netflix, the DVD through the mail service and go into your stores or just buying them yourselves, like when you were able to start collecting the television shows you liked, that changed some things. And it got us into this binge culture. It led us to exactly where we are today, where shows get dropped online and we just stream through them. We can watch them at our own leisure. We don't have to miss anything. It's crazy. Back in the day, you started watching Star Trek. If you didn't start from the beginning, it didn't matter. You just watched it, you know? Plus, things were more episodic back then, like, or they were more like self-contained, right? Monster of the Week. That's why, like back in the day, like shows like X-Files, shows like Star Trek: The Next Generation, those crime shows like CSI and stuff like that, right? They work because if you did miss something, you kind of were able to go into the flow, right? But now everybody's like, well, I got to start it from the beginning. I got to watch all the way through. I got to make it. And it's sometimes TV shows now are more like really long movies, right? Especially like things that are only like 4 or 6 episodes. But Lost, I was obsessed with Lost. Lost was one of those shows where every week there would be a discussion at work. There would be a discussion amongst me and my friends. We would all gather together on Wednesday nights to watch Lost together. We all had theories. We were all talking about stuff. And it really was one of those like water cooler moments in television history. Now, I know a lot of people have their thoughts about the way it ended. I think Lost is solid all the way through. It gets shaky a little bit in season 3 when they didn't really know where they were going. And then the writer's strike was happening at the time. But then they got together and they formulated a plan. And I thought Lost was just a brilliant show. And one of the reasons why is crazy cool sci-fi type stuff, great mystery, but really at the core, a character-driven show that just blows me away. I love Lost. What do you think about Lost, Rex? Did you like it?
I initially first 2 seasons I watched it. Then it lost me because you just kept dragging out. There was all these drops on, hints and whatever, but they never actually revealed anything. It was always one big tease. So they lost me after the 2nd season. I stopped watching it, and I watched it because of all the buzz, the buzz about it. William Davidson, Speed Racer, absolutely. That was one you rushed home to watch. UHF in the afternoons. There was another one called, I just looked it up, Space Giants. Okay, that was a big one. It ran started in 1966, and I would watch that, religiously. And that was where Goldar first showed up. and not the Goldar from Power Rangers, but it was just, there were those shows that I really watched. When you talk about the Lost era, when was that? What, 20 years ago, right?
2004.
2004. So I can't even remember what was big in 2000, in turn of the millennium.
HBO, really.
What?
Right? That's the era of HBO, really. Like Sopranos,
Yeah,
Oz, Deadwood, those ones.
Yeah, I mean, Sopranos obviously was phenomenal. Okay, but in a different way. It wasn't. You did need to, as you say, binge. You did need to watch a previous episode. To kind of keep along with it and follow it. So that following was very different from what I remember in the earlier years of TV. So and now there's just too much. There's too much to watch, I think, is the problem, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's another one that you would like, or a few others, or another era that you would like to discuss, Rex?
So let me think. So obviously, Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, enjoyed that as well. Okay, so that I really liked. Would watch religiously every week. I thought they did a real good job turning it, making a twist, making it darker. Trying to think. Star Trek Next Gen, when it came out, was huge for me because we all been waiting for something like that for so long. The movies were great, but this was something new. I thought they did a real good job with it, and people were skeptical because Picard was very different from a Kirk. Okay, a completely different kind of character. But I thought they did an excellent job with it. It was a little cheesy at first. If you go back and watch that first season, it felt like Picard was overacting a little bit. He was a little bit over the top, but then kind of felt more comfortable as he got into the role. Spin-offs, Deep Space Nine, everything else. I still watch it because it's on tonight on Heroes and Icons. It's amazing how much Heroes and Icons I watch.
Yeah,
I guess. It's weird. Going back to previous era, obviously Superman, George Reeves Superman. Okay. And I will religiously watch that. There was, of course, the Batman TV series, all right, with Adam West and Burt Ward. The campy, cheesy, that was a must watch, of course. Just trying to think back. There's so much. That's why I was like, man, how can he put this out there? There's so much we got to cover.
the topic that broke Rex, trying to figure out 5 shows to talk about. He can't do it.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm trying to think. High school, beyond that, college. What did I watch? I'm not even sure. It's all kind of jumbled in your head. You remember bits and parts about it. That's
all right.
why
I'll tell you what. I'll run through my list, and we can just see what you think about these. All right. So when people ask me what my single favorite television show of all time is, I always say Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Right? I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I bought episode guides. I had a subscription to the Buffy and the Angel magazines. I was obsessed with it. And I grew up kind of with Buffy a little bit. Like Buffy goes right along with my high school journey, right? When season 1 starts, she's at the end of her sophomore year. So was I. In season 2, she's a junior. So was I. In season 3, she's graduating. So was I. So I kind of grew up with Buffy in my teenage years. And you know me, I love horror stuff and I love comedy and I love action. And that is everything thrown together. And the character growth, like if you watch all through Buffy, Willow, Xander, Angel, Spike, all these characters really evolve and grow throughout the course of 7 seasons of Buffy and 5 seasons of Angels. I'll lump Angel in there as well because I'm obsessed with these shows and I love them. And I have probably watched Buffy more times all the way through than any other show. Were you into Buffy at all?
I enjoyed Buffy. And it was, I thought, interesting because I think it was one of the first. Well, no, second, because MASH, there's another one. Okay. But Buffy, like MASH, it was better as a series than it was as a movie. It got more notoriety as a TV series than it ever got as a movie, and I thought that was interesting because usually it kind of reversed itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And I do love the MASH movie. I really do, but that
yeah,
show is spectacular.
that show was something completely different, and I think Buffy was as well, and that's what made it unique. So that, yeah, I did enjoy Buffy. I didn't really watch Angel. You know, it just got to a point. From that era, I remember one of my favorites was 21 Jump Street. Okay, with Johnny Depp and so that was a big show then too. So I remember that. Enjoyed that as well. Kind of trying to take an element from the old cop shows, but kind of refresh it for a younger generation, if you will. And that, I think that's what they accomplished.
Okay. Another one of my favorites, probably my favorite HBO show. I know we've already talked about Sopranos. That's on my list too, right? But one of my favorites is Deadwood. I'm also obsessed with Deadwood. I've watched Deadwood through so many freaking times. What brilliant performances. Ian McShane, Brad Dourif, Timothy Olyphant, like such an amazing show. And I wouldn't even consider myself like a big Western guy. Like there are Westerns that I love. I think are some of the greatest cinematic achievements out there, like Unforgiven and Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars, The Searchers, right? Things like that. And I even love cheesy ones like The Quick and the Dead, or Tombstone, right? But like, I wouldn't consider myself a huge Western fan, but Deadwood is one of my favorite shows ever. There's an intensity in that. There is a build, and I think it is one of the best written shows of all time. I truly think that the dialogue, the syntax, like the way everything flows, like the structure of the stories, how stories overlap and pay off or don't pay off, things like that. Like, I think it's brilliant. The only sad thing about it was they axed it, so it didn't actually get to have its finale until years later. And it was good, and I appreciated that, but I really wish it would have gotten its full ending back in the day when it was being produced. Are you a fan of Deadwood?
I watched a few episodes. I never got into it, I guess, which is odd because I am a big Western fan. So I'm not sure why I couldn't get into it. I just didn't. So Dow says
Maybe that's when you should revisit. Maybe that's when you should revisit, Rex. You get Max probably, right? Do you have Max?
Dude, I'm canceling all this stuff. But
well, watch
Dow,
Deadwood first.
I would agree with the first season was good, but yeah, I want to say that they kind of lost their way.
With talking about Heroes?
Yeah.
Heroes really,
yeah, towards the end, and that kind of killed it. But
I agree. Heroes was a show that was another one that me and all my friends were into. And even in the first season, I was like, this should be shorter. I feel like they're stretching it, right? And then season 2 obviously had the problem with the writer strike, like Lost season 3 did, but it never recovered from that for me. It never recovered. I feel like they had one good season inside of them, and they kind of even extended that out a little bit too far. And then I dropped out halfway through season 3, and I never went back. I was just done with it. But I know a lot of people still like Heroes.
It's kind of like, I don't know. I think those shows needed like Dallas. As it started to falter, they shot JR, and that was awesome. That was a great move on their part. Okay, then became a mystery who shot him and everything else. So they reinvigorated the interest. I think for a lot of these TV shows, they kind of lost their way. But one thing I want to say that I noticed that they don't really do anymore, and that kind of hurts in a way. But part of it is because of the way the audiences change. Back in the day, you could have a self-contained 30-minute episode that had no relationship to a previous episode. Okay, and it's been lost. That art has really been lost. I think the era where you had Friends and Seinfeld and all those was really when it stopped. And that was good. You could watch it and miss it and then watch it again, and you didn't have any problems. At most, you get a 2-part or a 3-part episode with a continuing storyline. But now, Yeah, Mel, stay up. You're absolutely right. Heroes starts to get confusing. They kind of lose their way. So now it's everything is connected to everything else. So really can't you can't watch it that way. So that's kind of strange. I kind of miss that. You
Yeah.
got 30 minutes of just entertainment, goofy antics, whatever you want to call it, and it didn't have to relate to something that happened before or something after. You know, there'd be some sort of line that maybe connected one episode to another. But well, I guess Big Bang Theory was very much like that too. But
Well, yeah,
it
that
just
was
seemed like
Big Bang might be like the last big sitcom. Really, I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know if there's like a big sitcom right now. I just don't think. I don't think that we watch television like that anymore. We just don't
I would
really.
agree. I would agree. That's the topic. How is as maybe for a future show? How has your television consumption changed over the years? You know,
Yeah.
and just talking about your favorite TV shows, I think we're starting to touch on it. You're starting to
Oh,
see
for
how
sure. It's a
consumption
journey, right?
changed.
It's the journey of like whatever's on is on, and versus when DVD on like TV on DVD. And do you remember when that like, dude? You remember when like Star Trek: The Next Generation first came out on DVD in those big silver boxes, and they were like $120 each? Like, isn't that
Yep.
ridiculous to think that we were spending in like the year 2000, like spending like $120 for like 25 episodes of Star Trek? It's so crazy. What's crazy though is if you go before that, when people would like, and I have some of them, you would get them on VHS, and it would be like $20 a month, and you get like 2 episodes on a VHS sent to you or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
it's weird. And now
remember.
it's just
I remember.
at a button.
Yeah. Well, now I remember back in the day when the VCR first came out, and VHS and Betamax were still battling it out. And before they came up with a rental concept, the only way to watch the movies is you'd have to spend like $80 back then. That was a lot of money, okay, to buy the movie. So it faltered. Like, who the hell's going to buy a movie? You own one movie for $80, right? Then came the rental concept, and then obviously it started to take off after that. But that was a big thing. I think that when we got our VHS, it was top loading, so it looked like a cassette player that it popped out and you slide it in and pop back down, which turned out to be probably more preferred because if something went wrong or the tape got tangled, you could fix it easier because the top came up. But I remember watching we bought one, and I made my mom buy a movie. It was Tom Selleck was the star of that movie. What in the world was that movie? He was like a burglar or something like that. I don't even remember. And my mom said, we're never buying movies again. It just cost so much, and you had no idea whether it was going to be good or not. So I remember those days. It's just our consumption is maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Also known as The Magnificent Thief, 1984 American heist spy film starring Tom Selleck and Jane Seymour.
Yes, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I didn't hear the end of it. My mom was so pissed off. I made her buy that.
All right. Well, you mentioned sitcoms. Here's my favorite sitcom probably of all time, Arrested Development. I love Arrested Development. I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Me and my homies still to this day quote Arrested Development like almost daily. Like somebody will say something like Mr. F, right? Or somebody will say something like it's just two grown people getting a stew on together, right? Like there's always money in the banana stand. Like we quote Arrested Development so much, and it was so clever and so dumb. And usually with comedies, they're either dumb or they're too clever. They're too dumb or too clever, right? And very rarely do you have a balance of dumb and clever. And Arrested Development was that. I loved that show. The Ron Howard narration, Jason Bateman's great. Job is a fan favorite character. Like I love that dude. We quote that show so much still today. And even when they brought it back for season 4 and 5, I know some people had their issues. I liked them. Season 5 was probably the weakest, but it was all right. But season 4, I remember when they recut it to make it feel like it makes more sense, but I didn't like that because Arrested Development would always play with things as far as structure goes. And I thought that was part of it too. Actually, figure drawing it, yes, Community is on my list as well, and Parks and Rec. I love Parks and Rec. I love Community, and also Seinfeld. I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. I still watch Seinfeld. I have everything. I have it all on DVD. I have the nice big box set that comes with the coffee table book. I love it. And then another one of my favorite sitcoms from when I was growing up, and I still go back and try to watch it, but I always get stalled out, is Cheers. For some reason, I loved Cheers as a kid tremendously. But I think Arrested Development, Community, Parks and Rec, Seinfeld, and Cheers are my favorite sitcoms of all time. What do you think about those ones?
I got to say that for me, Seinfeld I watched. I enjoyed it. For me, my favorite sitcom has got to be Friends. There was just a synergy about this cast of characters, things they would run into. It was always funny. Seinfeld kind of had a sarcasm to it, a dark side that I don't want to say I didn't enjoy, but it was the difference between angry people, okay, and more or less happy people. So that was the kind of difference for me. Growing up sitcoms, I would have to say, first of all, the Bob Newhart show was hilarious. Okay. Just Bob Newhart and his dry kind of straight man sort of delivery was just, it worked out so well. Both the first version and the second version, because he had a second show as well. The
Newhart. Yeah, I used to watch Newhart a lot when I was a kid. That's the one with I'm Daryl. This is my brother Daryl, my other brother Daryl.
Yeah. So
and then that show ends with him waking up, and he's the Bob Newhart from the first show. I love that.
That I thought was a great twist. Cheers I loved because Cheers was an earlier version of Friends. It was just this group of characters who had this great synergy. When the old coach died, okay, and they brought in Woody Harrelson, you thought it wouldn't work quite as well, but it did actually. It did work really well. It was different, but it worked really well. Then Shelley Long, and then you had that whole kind of thing going on. That kind of rocked the boat a little bit.
Yeah.
Each era was fine, but it just kind of changed things. I think that's the one thing Friends had. It had that continuity.
Okay? Yeah, because
same characters all the way from beginning to end.
Yeah, because like Sam and Kirstie Alley's character, they didn't have the same energy and dynamic and chemistry that Shelley Long and Ted Danson did. Like, and I still make that reference all the time when I watch a show. I'm like, oh, they're Sam and Diane in this shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, they're just gonna have this. Will they? Won't they? Will they? Won't they? They do now. They're broken to what? Will they? Won't they? Like that kind of a thing. I mean, Cheers perfected that in its first few seasons, in particular. And what a great cast of characters! It led to another great sitcom, Frasier. And great music Frasier, and just great setting. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Frasier was good and stayed consistent because it had a smaller cast. Okay, regular cast that came on, so you didn't have that same problem. But Cheers, that's what happened with Cheers, I think. When you start to swap out characters, it just kind of changed, and then that was tough to recapture, if you will. And I think that's why Friends has had the longevity it's had. Seinfeld as well. Yeah.
I adore Seinfeld so much. I love how Seinfeld will have all these crazy elements in an episode, and somehow they'll bring it all together at the end into something. And then of course, Curb Your Enthusiasm, I think, is really, really funny too. So those are some of my favorites. We've mentioned this one before. Let's just show some love. Sopranos. Sopranos is one of the greatest shows ever, and it's always on my mind to go back and do a rewatch. It's been years since I've done it. When I watch Sopranos, though, I get into like making these like sandwiches all the time. Like they're always eating these sandwiches with deli meats and shit like that, right? So I always like eat too much when I'm watching Sopranos, but man, I love that show. A lot of people didn't like the ending, but it does feel like over time, more people are into that ending. But what a great show. What some memorable episodes, great characters, and it had heart to it, but it also never shied away from the dangerous aspect of these characters and their life, right? So there would be characters that you would like, but then you found out they were complete pieces of shit, right? And then they would get what they deserved, and it would like hurt you, but at the same time you felt like they deserved it. So Sopranos was really good at balancing unlikable characters into likable characters, and then making sure you realize that Tony's not a good dude. You know what I'm saying? Not really. So it's a really, that was a great show. That was so good. I need to go back and rewatch it.
For me, just, the first episode, you're watching it, and you see the opening credits, and he's going through the tolls and everything else. Everything is something that anyone from my area that grew up in this area would recognize. Okay. So that in and of itself made it very appealing. Then what it was, it turned out it reminded me of a deep dive into Goodfellas, if you will. It was a Goodfellas structure, but it was a TV series, so you could do more. And obviously the uniqueness was him going to a therapist, and that was the big unique part. But it was phenomenal. I mean, we're always obsessed with mobster movies, as you know. All right, Society, whatever you want to call it, Godfather. I mean, so one of the greatest movies, series of movies of all time. Goodfellas, you just get obsessed with this kind of, even on a comedy level. Steve Martin in My Blue Heaven, which was, obviously a comedic version, but it was still hilarious, So yeah, to me that had to be one of, and James Gandolfini was really good in that role. I mean, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, so that, and growing up in this area, you have to understand, we read about this, the Gambino family, the Merlinos, it's part of what you call it, what you will. It was something that we read about in the news and went on, every day. There's just something about that. Figure drawing, I have friends and tons of them who talk about Breaking Bad. I have never watched Breaking Bad, so I could not comment. But everything, all my friends, very positive. It's just getting to the point where it's so tough to actually sit down and start something. You know what I mean? And be able to
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat. Everybody keeps telling me to watch Breaking Bad, and I've never been able to. I've just never watched it, and I don't have the commitment to do it right now.
One of my best friends, he screams about it. I can't believe you haven't watched it. It's awesome, blah, blah. It's just, you never, it's a commitment. If I sit down and start watching, I feel like I got to watch until the end. And how many seasons does that run? It's like, it feels like a major commitment.
Yeah, and then there's the spin-off, right? It's got its own spin-off. Yeah.
Better Call Saul, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I can make that commitment. It's like, if you watch something like Friends or Seinfeld or whatever, that you're not making that kind of commitment. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can pick it up, watch half hour here, half hour there, drop it for a little bit, go back to it. You haven't missed anything. One thing I hate, there was a streaming series, I think on Amazon called not The Abyss, The Expanse. And somebody told me to watch it, and so I did, and it had like 3 seasons, maybe 4. And then they went on hiatus for like the longest time. And then, and I really enjoyed it and wanted to pick it up. It's like 3-4 years. And they came out the next season. But the problem is now so much time has passed, I don't remember what happened. So I kind of feel like if I want to watch this latest season, I have to go back and watch the first few. And that was a huge investment.
Yeah.
I spent like several weeks watching this. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going back, and rewatching all the episodes I've seen just so I can watch the next season. It just feels like such an investment, and it's hard to do.
Yeah. Another one of my favorites that I haven't actually finished yet because I haven't watched the newest season of it that they did 20 something years later. Twin Peaks. Of course, anybody who knows me and the kind of films I love and the kind of comics I love, you got to know that I'm a fan of Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is so quirky, so weird, so metaphysical, so serious and dramatic, and it's it's basically parodying all those soaps from back in the day, those nighttime soaps, Dallas, Knots Landing, Dynasty. It's like it's like making fun of these things, but it's actually doing what they do better, in my opinion, but really just making it so cheesy and hokey at times, but a very sinister core, right? The murder of Laura Palmer, the big mystery. Now, the big problem with this show was that it was so big that the studio, the I guess the ABC, I think, or whoever it was, they like pushed them to solve the murder. Now, Mark Frost and David Lynch never wanted to solve the murder till the end of the show, right? So they pushed and pushed, and in the middle of season 2, they solved the murder. You find out who killed Laura Palmer. It's all crazy. It's all supernatural, right? Which is an interesting take. And there's so many elements to this show. Quirky, weird comedy, melodramatic soap opera stuff, and then this like sinister, dark kind of thing, right? And then they lost their way a little bit, and then they pulled it back together by the end of the show. It was already too late. Then they did the movie. Now they've brought back a lot of those characters, and they did The Return on Showtime, which people tell me is phenomenal, and I haven't watched it yet, but I have just recently, earlier this year, completed a rewatch of Twin Peaks season 1 and 2 and the movie Fire Walk with Me, and now I am ready to jump into Twin Peaks The Return. Were you a Twin Peaks fan?
I was kind of on and off. It felt like it wasn't on for a really long time, and it had a lot of issues. LTRX, Monty Python's Flying Circus, definitely. And then which ended up spawning the movies, which were phenomenal. So yeah, Twin Peaks, I just remember there seemed to be like a gap somewhere during that. And then that's when they kind of lost me. You know, they were doing reruns every week and there weren't new episodes. And I was like, yes, you know, I'm not watching this. So I just kind of felt like they kind of didn't have their act together, and that kind of hurt the long-term viewership of that.
I remember when it was airing, like in like 90, 91, something like that. And I'm like 10 years old and I don't get everything, but I just, my mom and my stepdad watched it. And I just remember like, I was transfixed by elements of that show for some reason. Cause there wasn't a lot of horror on television, and Twin Peaks is slightly horror adjacent, maybe, you know what I'm saying? It's got elements in there. Really wild show. I'm really excited to finally watch The Return and start talking about it. All right. And then the last two I got I was like, I got to throw some modern shows on here. I don't watch a lot of modern television, but there are two shows that I absolutely obsess over. As soon as they drop, that's what I'm doing. Stranger Things and Cobra Kai. Stranger Things, both of them, of course, have 80s nostalgia, right? Cobra Kai, because it's based off of Karate Kid, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, and Stranger Things, because it takes place in the 80s. But Stranger Things is like all the things that made Spielberg films work so well in the 80s, for instance. Like Stranger Things knows how to do that and set it in the 80s, but make it for today. Stranger Things, I think, is great all the way through. Cobra Kai has no right to be as good as it is. It is melodramatic. It is silly. It is outlandish. But man, oh man, does it suck me in every single time a season drops. And I'm so ready because we're days away from the first part of the final season airing. And man, I love Cobra Kai. Those are probably my two favorite modern shows where I will drop anything when the new seasons come out.
I got to tell you, I guess, you know, as we talk about how your consumption has changed, I guess mine has too. So I watched a couple of seasons of Cobra Kai and I enjoyed it, but didn't really want to make that investment to continue watching it. And I find that I am now drifting away from these series and drifting more towards when I'm streaming, just catching movies here and there. So like last night, I watched Deadpool again. It's just, I don't want to make that investment. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know it sounds kind of strange, but I just like, I don't want to be forced to watch another one next week or another one next week. And I realize I can go back, but it's just, I don't know how to describe it. So, you know, only every now and again. So I miss, yeah, as I said before, I really miss those self-contained episodes that do not require you to go back and know what's going on. So it leads into the next episode, which leads into the next one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Figure Drawing says the show itself is bad, but the chemistry is good. I haven't seen enough of it to really say it, but
I would agree with what he says. I mean, I do think that like if this was any other show, and it would just be dumb. But there's something about that cast, the way they work together. It's so much fun for me. I love Cobra Kai. So excited for
I would like to see the new movie though, as it comes out. I'm curious to see what they're going to do to kind of Jackie Chan and what's his face. Both
Ralph
are going to be
Macchio.
in it. Yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to swing this one, but I'm interested to see.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see if it's following Cobra Kai or if it's like ignoring it, or it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with it. 100%.
All I can say is do not bring back Jaden Smith.
Well, what a crazy, fun conversation, right? I know you couldn't peg it down to just 5 or 6 movies, but we had a great discussion just about television, the way we view it, how it's changed our childhoods, our early adult life, where we are today, things like that. What a great conversation, Rex.
Yeah, I got to tell you, so the only one I did, even when I saw your email, the only one that really came to mind was that I was really addicted to week was the $6 Million Man. And you did have to watch sometimes a previous episode to understand, because it was probably one of the first that had a multi-part series within the series. And so that one was one I remember because it was on ABC, which for us here locally was Channel 6. And for whatever reason, the rabbit years where I lived, you just could not pick up Channel 6. It was just awful. So I'd have to battle the antenna and everything else trying to get a clear picture. And that was probably the most frustrating thing because I would really want to watch each episode. So that I kind of remember. Wonder Woman about the same time as well. So,
yeah.
But that I can watch on Heroes of the Time.
Okay. Well, heck yeah. What's old is new again, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. What a great conversation, Rex. Thank you for being here. You out there in the chat, thank you for joining us today. Rex, what y'all got coming up?
All right. So tonight, 7 p.m., we got the original art on the EXP. Nick will be here with some great original art, high-end pieces, and then he always has affordable pieces for people getting into or, use tighter budget, if you will. But even if you are not a collector of original art, it's a great show to catch. Usually Nick has a story behind each piece that he presents. A lot of this comes from his personal collection, so definitely watch it. It's a good time. And then Robbie and I will be back, hopefully with John, on Monday for our normal comics collectible show at 6 p.m. Eastern time on the EXP. So what about you? What do you got coming down?
Well, we're right in the midst of Action Fest. So for Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, we're going to be talking about Last Action Hero. A lot of people consider this and True Lies kind of like the last 80s action movies, even though they're from the 90s. I have not seen Last Action Hero since the 90s, so this is going to be a fun revisit, I think. So that's what we got coming up on PCP Movie Night Monday, and then join me for Rockin Robbie Live on Sunday when we return with the Teen Dog Shades Night, where I'm going to be sharing my experience out searching for UFOs last Sunday. So that should be fun as well. All right. We appreciate everybody for being here. We're dipping out. Station.